Hi, everyone. This is Gloria, the host of the Loving the Work You Do podcast. Welcome to one of the episodes in the Grief series. And today I have with me, I have Tisha Harvey. She is a mom. She is also an upcoming author. She is also someone who works with the veterans community, the homeless veterans community. And thank you for serving, actually. And I love that she is also a social worker. Has two teenage boys, so she's just like me. I have three boys. She has two, but we're still boy moms. Hashtag. And so definitely glad to have you here. Looking forward to what you can share personally about your experience. You lost your mom, and then you also lost the father of your kids. And those two events started you on a journey for advocacy and also to be able to help other people.
Thank you, Gloria, for having me. And so, yes, I am a social worker, and my degree, it's an MSW degree, Master in Social Work, holding an associate clinical position right now. And my mom passed in June of 2019. It was
Okay.
the summer after my first year of grad school. And then my kid's father was murdered in April 2020. So not even a
Mm.
year apart.
Wow. Okay.
Um, yes.
Mhm.
So yes, thank you for having me on the show. And I am excited to share things that have helped me um, heal during this time and also move forward.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I know, like, I try to do my best in introducing people, but of course, I always ask people to share a little bit about themselves. So, can you introduce yourself to the people listening?
Yes. So, like Gloria said, I am the mother of two teen boys. My boys are 13 and 15. I grew up in the Bay Area, San Francisco. So, I'm a California girl, born and raised.
Wow.
And I am the middle of five. I grew up, uh, like the majority of my childhood, we were homeless and struggled a lot. And watching my mom struggle and overcome her addiction, it just empowered me to um, move forward and know that I can do anything that I set my mind to. I never had, well, I would say I struggled a little bit in school growing up. I do have a learning disability and I was in special ed a lot. And so I never would have thought that I would be where I am today, like with a master's degree. This was something that I did not foresee in my future. And it wasn't until I had my second son where my oldest son's teacher and speech therapist actually encouraged me to go back to school. And I started with early childhood education and I just continued to chip away at it. And then the love for learning developed as I uh, became more educated and started to really take it serious and pursue my education. And so I was at the JC for 12 years back and forth before I went to the university. And so once I got my BA degree, I was like, you know what? I can do this. I can keep going. I took a break for a year or so and I was like, I'm just going to do it and apply for the master's program. And I got into both programs that I applied to. And
Wow.
so the rest is history. Like I am very excited to move forward and for what's to come and share my story. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to come on your show today.
Thank you for sharing that. Oh my gosh. Learning disability. You know, that is not part of the story that we want to share, but I just want to sit with it a little because, even little things um, can make a difference.
Mhm.
And I feel like apart from we're in a time period where everybody talks about mental health, but there's not a lot of awareness yet to, the role that those type of um, things play, like speech, not being able to enunciate the right words at the right time. Like, I, for one, have like some letters that I don't pronounce well. I always thought it was because I was, born in here, went to Nigeria to study, da 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 da. But I have a friend in the education field, and she was like, "Yeah, I grew up in Nigeria. I don't think that's your problem." And she still owes me, if she ever listens to this episode, she owes me like a session with spell read, which is one
Mhm.
of the things she does, where she said she'll help me figure out the letter and I'll relearn how to pronounce it. But all that to say, like, noticing that thing even in me made me notice it in one of my kids. And
Mm.
so at some point, he ended up taking supportive classes and programs to help him with his speech too. Um, and, I think we overlook all those things, but it makes such a difference in our life. You mentioned JC. I wonder, like, I was thinking, JC, isn't that like,
Junior college.
oh,
Yeah.
I overthought that already. I'm like, isn't that like a speakers club or something? Okay. Junior college. What's junior college?
So
Community
city
college?
college, a community college.
Gotcha.
Yes,
Okay. All
yes,
right.
yes.
It's a
I
shame I didn't know that.
when I was a younger, I always had a dream of becoming a nurse. And so when I first started at the community college, I started with prereqs for the nursing program. And I got
Ah.
discouraged really fast because I was struggling with the classes and I wasn't having any success. And I just was like, and then I got a job as a CNA, as a nursing assistant.
Mm.
So once I got that job, and then I got this, I was at one of the biggest hospitals in San Francisco at UCSF. I was like, oh, I'm working, I'm making good money, I don't need to go to school. So yeah, I would go to school, then take a break, then go to school and take a break. So I didn't get serious with school until I was
Mm.
like 26 years old.
Mm. I think that CNA field does that to you. Speaking not out of knowing anything, but I see how it helps like most people in like the immigrant community.
Oh yeah.
They can come in with whatever degree they have, and then immediately they can get jobs in that field. So yeah, it's a lucrative field. So how were you able to go from that CNA position to now notice that you liked things that were related to social work, and then to be able to chart your way through there?
So I had left my job at UC and I was out of work for a while. And I was volunteering in my son's class. My oldest son was actually born deaf. And so he was
Mm.
in a toddler program and very intense program where he had speech therapy. And I would volunteer in the classroom. And the teacher and the speech therapist came to me one day and was like, we want to get you a job. There's something there. You are really good with the kids. We want you to
Mm.
go back to school and figure this out, and we're going to support you. And they found a way for me to take a test to get, because I didn't have any early childhood education
Mhm.
units. So I took a test at the school district, and I started working for San Francisco Unified School District. And then I started going to the community college and I took early childhood education and I
Okay.
just started chipping away at it. And so I graduated from the community college with my early childhood education certification. And then
Okay.
I went into the university, and my goal was to become a speech therapist. When I got into the communicative disorders program at San Francisco University, And once I got into that program, it was like a shell shock. It was like, it was a culture shock. It was every shock in the world. It was so competitive. I was the only Black person in the
Mhm.
program. And I finished the first year, but the second year was so challenging. And then I had a professor, an audiology professor, who told me, this is not working for you. Straight out. She didn't ask how I
Wow.
can support you, how I can help
Mhm.
you, how I can make it work. Just straight out.
What?
I didn't pass one of her tests and she was nasty. And so I filed a complaint, took it all the way up to the dean. And then the dean said, why don't you
Mm.
just change your major? And when the dean said it, I
Not fight.
no support, no trying to help me figure it out. When the
Mm.
dean said it, I said, oh, it's time to go.
Ah,
um, like if you are familiar with speech therapy,
mhm.
the field is predominantly Caucasian women.
Yes.
There are
Yeah.
not a lot of people of color in
Yeah.
speech therapy.
Yeah.
And so I just was like, I did not want to fight that battle. I did not
Mhm.
want to, it was too much. It was really hard and it was challenging. And so instead of like, fighting them and fighting to succeed, I was exposed to the Africana Studies department through an elective, and I took it was a literature course, but the professor focused on all African American women who were authors and poets, and I fell in love with the program, and so
Mm.
I changed from communicative disorders to Africana Studies, and I got my BA degree in Africana Studies. And
Oh.
social work came about. It came about because I learned that you don't have to take a GRE to get into the master's program for social work, but every other master's program they're looking for GREs, um,
Mm.
test results. And so I am not a good test taker. I get very bad test anxiety, and so I said, you know what? I don't need to take the GRE, so I'm going to apply to the social work program. When I got my BA degree, I just knew that, for me at the time, I felt like, and I saw, when you have a certain level of education, there is
Mhm.
a certain level of success, a certain level of respect, a certain level of opportunities. And
Mm.
so I knew that just with my BA degree, I felt like it wasn't enough. I still was working like a few jobs. Like one year, I had like 6 W-2s. I was working two, three,
Mhm.
4 jobs to stay afloat. And I wanted to get one job where I can just, be able to
Yes.
work one job and not have to work a side gig here, a side
Mhm.
gig there, and
Mhm.
picking up little gigs here
Mhm.
to sustain the
Mhm.
lifestyle that I have,
Yep.
and so that's how the social work program came about.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And it's so funny because with the you know, working families, low income families, that is always the thing. I know like a few years ago I wrote something about that. Like people, will be like, oh, they're not saving or they're not investing. Like you're working three jobs. Like by the time you get home, you're tired. And like the only thing and you barely even have enough. Like if you had enough in the first place, you wouldn't be trying to pull three jobs. So, you know,
Yes.
and so you're not saving, you're barely getting. And look, this is kind of personal to me too, because I might have gotten myself structured to get into a better place now. But there was a time when things were so hard from the ex's perspective, as in there was no income flowing in from him, no child support. And then I think that was like during the beginning of the recession, things were not as buoyant as this current recession. Like if you had money, you had to spend it down. You know this as a social worker, like you had certain amounts you had to have in your account. At the end of the day, I was tired and the money still wasn't enough. And that's the thing. You're doing all these things and the money. is
It's still
still
not
not
enough.
enough. So, you know,
And one,
you
another big goal that I did not foresee with just my BA degree was buying a house.
mm,
That's one of my goals. And that, I just felt like furthering my education would allow me to reach some of
mhm,
the goals that I want to
mhm,
obtain. And buying a house is one of them. And
mhm,
I could
mhm,
not do that with just my BA degree.
mhm.
And
Oh
like
yeah.
you said, it's like it's not enough. It's not
Mhm.
enough.
And I feel like it's important to emphasize also because I'm a finance person doing this podcast that people need to understand the importance of education. Funny again, I have an article or blog post I wrote, which was it's almost like the importance of education to people that dream.
Mm,
Like no matter what you're planning for yourself or for your kids, like somebody has to sacrifice first,
yeah.
you
Yes.
know, and that sacrifice means you going to get your education so that you're setting up the stage. Now that you got a house, like, the Bible says, we leave an inheritance for our children and our children's children. You got them set up that way. They already see what education brings you. They already see, the opportunities you've afforded them now will has given them a peek to what the good things to come will be like. And so even they will continue going up that ladder to be, to be better and to do better. And I don't know if people understand that. And I also see the bondage, truthfully, that all the services bring to food stamp, housing assistance, that thing can trap you. It
Yes.
is a spirit.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
tell people it is a spirit. I've
Yeah.
been on food stamp for a bit. There you can stay.
Yeah.
It is a choice.
Yeah.
People get housing assistance, all of those things. You can stay. Um, People stay and people come back too. Bam, bam. They cut you off of all the assistance, and now you have to keep struggling. So definitely kudos to everything you did to get you here. And I like that you gave me the opportunity to be able to talk about some of the things that I'm passionate about on that front. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing that. So I wonder if at this point you can share your grief story, and more importantly, like, losing mom.
Hmm.
Maybe we can start with that, and then you can flow into the your children's father.
Yeah. So, like I said, I lost my mom in the summer of 2019, and I had just finished my first year of grad school. Um, when I got into grad school, there's a lot of unpacking and self-reflecting that one has to do, and especially
Mm,
for social work, because you're educating yourself to be of service to others. And a big part of the social work program is providing therapy. Like there's a clinical piece to it. And so in order to be of service to others, you have to be able to, self-reflect and look at what you've been through, what you've overcome, your successes, your
mm,
struggles. And so that first year unpacked so much for me because I had suppressed and buried so much. Um, it wasn't until I got my education that I was even able to openly talk about my learning disability. Like that was
mm,
something that I've struggled with for a long time, and something that I was embarrassed about, something I got teased about, something I fought about, for years. And so a part of the self-reflecting was some of the mental health challenges that I've struggled with personally. And I was asked to be on a show, and on this show, I talked about some of my childhood struggles and some of the things I've overcome. And the interview, my mom didn't like the interview. And the interview was in April, and
oh, and she passed in June.
she passed in June. The interview was in April. She was really upset with me. Like I sent her the interview and I told her, I did not share my story to hurt anyone. It's time for me to talk about what I've been through, what I've lived through. This is not to hurt anyone, and it's definitely not to hurt you, but I definitely want to share my story so that I can begin to heal for myself and help others. And so, May, there was a concert. There's this Stone Soul concert that's every year here. And I was going with a friend, and her mother was coming. And so I was like, oh, let me see if my mom would come. And I called her, and then she was still mad at me. And she told me her feelings was hurt and she didn't want to go to the concert with me. So I was like, devastated, like, oh my gosh, she's really still upset about that interview. And so that was in May. June, my son at the time was in the 8th grade and he was graduating. And she came to the graduation with my sister. And it was June 13th. She came to the graduation and I gave her a hug and I told her I loved her. And this was something that we never hardly ever did. We hardly ever embraced each other. But I gave her a hug and I told her I loved her. The next day, my sister called me, historic. She's saying, Mom is unresponsive. The ambulance is here. And I dropped everything and rushed out there in 15 minutes. And when I got there, the ambulance was still working on her. And they said, it was over the time that they would usually work on someone. It had been 45 minutes. They still weren't getting a pulse. She wasn't responding. And all of emotions, like, oh my gosh, it's like, I hadn't talked to her, she was upset with me, and then she passed. And I was just like, that was really devastating. It was really hard for me to, accept the fact that she was no longer here with us. And then while she laid there on the floor, there was a lot of confusion as to where her body was going to go. And that night, it was just like, how does this happen? Someone passes in their home and then we're left to, first we were told, you can call a funeral home and have her picked up. Or, it was like one of the two. Or if it was like, if we talk to the doctor, you can have her picked up. But if we can't get a hold of the doctor, we may have to take her to the coroner's office and do an autopsy to make sure there was no foul play. So that went back and forth for hours before they picked her up. And so we're like, this is crazy. And so we finally got the okay. They got a hold of her doctor. They got her medical records. She had heart issues, and she had a stent in her heart. And so they ruled out that it was a heart attack. And so we finally were given the green light to have her picked up. She passed at 7. Her body did not get picked up until 1 a.m.
Wow.
And so that it was extremely hard, and then we were left with, what do we do with her body? Do we cremate her? Do we bury her? She never wanted to have the conversation before she passed. Another thing that I was trying to do was get her some life insurance. And we were trying to figure out, like, write a will, like, what do you want us to do with your body? Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be buried? She never wanted to have that conversation. And so we were left trying to figure all of that out. And, I was at the time, like, very grateful that, like, how it happened, when it happened, during the time of the summer, because I was dead smack in the middle of my program on a summer break. And so, I had a couple months to really figure things out and move forward. I had people questioning me, like, you're going to continue with your program after your mom just died and you're not going to take a break. And I'm like, no. Do you know how hard I worked to get where I am? I have 2 more semesters. Why would I take a break? Because my mom passed, like, she would not want me to stop what I'm doing. She would want me to keep going. And I had to deal with, making that decision to move forward and not stay in that and stay stuck. I had to move forward. And so that year to come, I went in with a mindset like focus. I am here for a reason, and that is to get my degree. I don't want to deal with nothing or nobody else. And
Mhm.
I isolated myself. I did. And, thinking like looking back at it now and thinking about some of the things that I did, I probably would have done things different. But at the time, I was still grieving. I was still grieving. I had just lost my mom. And so I just went in and, really, had my eyes set on the prize.
Mhm.
I'm going to get my degree and I don't
Mhm.
want to deal with
Mhm.
anything else. And so I didn't socialize as much as I probably should have. I didn't make, build friendships like I probably should have, but I was hurting and I was still grieving.
Look, you were okay. There's some of us too that went to colleges. We didn't make uh do the networking we needed to do. Like I remember being in college. I don't even know. I had friends, but in hindsight, I'm like, wait, college really should have been about you just
Mm.
meeting a lot of people and networking and networking. So we learn, like you said, and then we keep moving on. I want to go back to what you said for a minute about just what's the word, affirming what you said, that our parents, the I don't know, the taboo that insurance or planning for their death brings to them. I know for a fact my dad wasn't like that, because more because like his background was in the stockbroking industry, in finance, in insurance, so that wasn't an issue. But his wife, though, meaning my mother, you cannot get her to sit down and talk death. The mere talk of let's plan your death means you're trying to kill her. Okay, that's one. And then you can't even get her to get insurance. I remember years ago, my older brother tried to get her to get insurance, and she was like, "Okay, okay, I'll do it." And then we got everything ready, and then turns out it was one of those insurance where they'll come to the house and draw blood. So there goes that story.
And I did all of that with my mom, and she got denied because of her health issues. So the
Oh.
guy that I was working with at the time was like, "We can do this guaranteed one. You pay this." It was very expensive, and the payout was not as much. And I turned it down. And it was
Mm,
literally months after he offered me that she passed away.
that's freaky. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah,
But you know what? All is well. I think the we are learning.
yes,
The generations that we're raising, they are also learning. Like these are important conversation. There's a place for insurance. How this conversation today has gotten into the finance, I don't know, but I see where it makes sense because you're in
yes,
the human services field. So
yes,
these are all the things that the community that you service need. Even though we're talking about grief, people also need to get their life in order, so
yes.
that right.
We definitely need to get our affairs in
Hmm.
order,
Hmm.
because the last thing that I ever want my children to have to do is put up a GoFundMe page.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
we have to get our affairs in orders. And even if it's conversations that your elders do not want to have, you need to force it, because
Hmm.
you don't want to be left with trying to figure out how you're going to bury them or take care of their, their remains when they
Hmm.
pass.
Hmm. And it's funny, like they don't think about that. And like, okay, you're not funding how are we burying you when you pass, and
Yes.
things of those nature. It's also funny, like in some of my own research personally, like, and this is for any parent listening who's like a divorced mom, single parent, and it's that even single parents or divorced parents, whatever we call ourselves, there's a place for us getting insurance on the X. So if one has a good relationship with the ex, get them to be like, look, we're not trying to kill you, but it would be nice to know that if you accidentally pass away, 5 years after the kids are still insured. Like there's a reason why people support kids. And if that's that person, then get some insurance, even if it's half of what they're worth, or even if you're going to take the money out of the child support. It's not like social services is coming after you for
Yeah.
taking $50 every month. Take that out, pay towards that life insurance so that the kids, there's something for them in the future. And that's just something that even I just found out. And I'm like, oh, shoot, should have done this like ages ago. Right. And so I feel like that's a good segue to talking about your children's father. I know he was murdered, and leaving you with two beautiful boys to take care of. So if it's something you're comfortable sharing, can you share how he passed, and then the work that you're doing now to honor what happened to him?
Yes. So, we went into quarantine. This pandemic started in March of
Mm-hmm.
2020. And April 2nd is when he was murdered. So we weren't even a month
Oh.
into the pandemic and he was murdered. You know, um, God
Mm.
works in mysterious ways.
Mm-hmm.
My youngest son was always with his dad, always with his dad.
Mm.
And I mean, there were times where he would have all four boys. And
Oh.
so, it's just like crazy that this happened on a day where he just so happened to be by himself. And we found out that he was being followed. And there's a little snippet of a video of a car following him. He had just got off the freeway and he was less than 2 minutes away from his home. Around the corner from his home, he was driving and someone shot into the car and he was still alive. He crashed into the pole, like he was going straight, but his car
Mm.
veered this way and he crashed into a pole. And there so happened to be a few teenage girls. They were out there and they were talking to him, trying to, tell him that help was on the way. And he was alive for a while, but it took the ambulance so long to get there. He ended up
Mm.
passing on the way to the hospital. And
Oh,
so
wow.
we don't know what happened. We don't know, we don't know anything because um, he was not in the streets. He was a football coach. He, went to work and he took care of his kids. And, it, there's been a bunch of rumors about what happened, what could be, but we don't know. We don't know what happened. And so um, I it was like late at night. His sister called me on the three-way with his mom and told me what happened. And I was in disbelief, like, oh my gosh. And it's really weird because yet again, me and him were at odd terms. We were like not in a good space.
Oh.
And I had blocked him like in February. We got into a little disagreement about football at the time my son was in 7th grade and he was asking me about high school. And I'm like, he's in 7th grade. Like, leave me alone. Like, you're bothering me. Leave me alone. Like, I don't want to have
Mhm.
this conversation right now. And I blocked him because he called me out my name. And, we got into a little argument through a text. And that was in February. So I hadn't even talked to him when he passed. And so it's just like
Oh.
crazy. Like this happened with both.
Mhm.
These were my two go-tos. These were my main support systems, like
Mhm.
their dad and my mom. If I ever needed anything, whether we were not talking or not, I could call both of them.
Mhm.
And so when I got the call, I was just like so distraught. Like, what do I do? How am I gonna tell this to my kids? How am I gonna tell my boys that their
Mhm.
dad was just murdered? And so I did not have the courage to do it by myself. And I took them over to to his mom's house, their grandmother house, and told them there. And that day it was really hard. He has two other kids, and we all met over there at his mom's house, and it was a house full of us, and we got together and we had a candlelight visual, and so since then I've been advocating for. It started with a reward to offer for any information leading to, arrest and conviction of whoever's involved. And
Mhm.
I got the Richmond Police Department to release this reward, and it's $10,000. And so
Okay.
anyone with information um, for Anthony's death, if there is someone arrested and convicted, then they are gonna be rewarded with $10,000, and that's been my biggest push was to get that
Mm,
reward out. And since I've done an interview with the Guardian, there's an article out about gun violence because after he was actually the first murder victim in Richmond, California, and then
mm,
after he died, after he was murdered, there were multiple murders in Richmond.
mm,
Like it just went crazy. In Richmond and Oakland and San Francisco, like so many murders. When in each city the numbers had started to decline, and then we get into this pandemic, and now all of a sudden numbers are rising, and it's
mm.
just like crazy. Like, we're supposed to be in the house right
Yeah.
now, how are you guys out killing
Mm,
people? you
mhm,
know and my biggest thing is there is a murderer walking around
mhm,
while we mourn.
mhm.
People are gossiping about what happened, and we're mourning. There's someone who is walking free, and we are mourning. Like, this man had four kids, and his youngest son is 2 years, 3 years old now. He was two at the time.
Oh.
And so he's not going to have any recollection of his dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my biggest fight has been to get answers from my boys. Like, my boys deserve to know what happened, you know. And so I've been a part of this support group that this woman named Dewanda does in Richmond, and it's for anyone who has lost a family member in Richmond, and she meets once a month. I believe it's like once or twice a month, and we get together and we just talk about um, our loved ones
Mhm,
in ways to keep their name alive. And one of the things that she's doing now, she's actually advocating to collaborate with the Richmond Police Department and find better ways for them to notify families of their loved ones being killed.
okay.
And so, trying to involve chaplains, trying to involve counselors, and she had this one meeting where there was the captain, the sergeant, the lieutenant, all at this meeting, and she had us talk about our loved ones, and that meeting was so powerful. Like, out of that meeting came the Guardian interview. She told me to share pictures and share his story, talk about who he was. And so, like, I was barely able to get through what I had to say because I was bawling so much, but I just showed picture after picture after picture after picture and talked about who he was, and it was very powerful. And so, that's been my work. I've been advocating to get the word out about the reward, advocating to get justice, and advocating to keep his name alive. Like, he touched so many people with his coaching, and
Mm,
so many children like loved him and looked up to him, and he did a lot for his community, and he did a lot for free for his community. And so I've been advocating to keep his name alive and to get, justice.
mm, mm. So what does advocating look like? And I guess let me explain that. So if I wanted to advocate for someone, if someone is listening and they want to advocate for the loss of a loved one, it could be through being murdered. It could be that maybe they died at home, and you don't know what happened. I feel like that's also a different type of advocacy. Like you don't know what happened. Like, did someone not take care of them properly? Did someone push an older person and made them fall? Those type of things. How would you advise that someone go about it using whatever um, steps and processes you've discovered along the way?
So for me, my advocacy came around um, justice for Anthony. It started with, okay, so I was on Facebook and I saw this post, and on the post was a flyer, and it had the chief. Well, she was an intern, and it was intern, an African American woman was the interim chief of police for Richmond. And this was
Ah,
the first, and then she actually got elected to be, so now she's currently chief of police. And
okay.
so on the flyer was her, the woman DeWanda, who I talked about with the support group, um, Gonzalez, Mr. G is what I know him as, and he has a peacekeeper nonprofit.
Okay.
And I recognized him because he did some work at my son's school. And so I looked at the flyer and I was like, there's some heavy hitters on here. Let me see. And so that's where I just started to pick each person on the flyer and reached out to them. So I started with the chief of police at the time, and I sent her a message on Facebook. And I explained who I was, and I explained how I found her, and I asked her how we could, get a reward. Can you talk to the family about where is the investigation? And so then I reached out to DeWanda and I inquired about what she was doing and found out about this program that the
Mm,
support group that she has. And so advocating for me started with reaching out to the chief of police, reaching out to the investigators, asking questions. Where are we at with the investigation? How can we support you with the investigation? What leads do you have? What information do you need? Um, just
mm,
reaching out to, you know, wherever you are, reaching out to the department, the police department, and finding out who the investigator is on the case. Because when someone's murdered, there's automatically an investigator assigned to the case. And so reaching out to the department and asking questions. How can we support you? What can we do? What information do you have? What information do you need? So it can start with just a little conversation. It can start with just a message, inquiring about where they are with the investigation. And, every situation is different. And
mhm,
for me, I just, there are some unsettling feelings, where when something like this happens and you just don't know, it's like,
mhm,
you don't know what happened. So you don't know if people are watching you. You don't know if people are watching where he lived and
mhm,
watching us come and go. You don't, you just don't
mhm,
know. And so
mhm,
a lot of my advocating came into play because I want justice for my boys.
mhm,
Me and
mhm.
Anthony were together for 20 years on and off. I met him when I was 16 years old. And
Oh,
we were together 10 years before we even had children. And so, even though we were not okay when he passed, we weren't
mhm,
talking when we passed, there's still a lot of love there. There's still a lot of loyalty. I've always been loyal to him. And we have kids together. Like my
mhm.
son, my 15-year-old, when my 15-year-old is asking me what's going on with the investigation, like I can't sit back and do nothing.
Yeah.
I have to show them that I'm trying, that I'm
Mhm,
going to try to get answers. And so that's where it started. It's like, my kids are asking and wanting to know what's going on. And so I have to do my due justice, my due diligence to get justice for their father.
yeah. Oh, again, I am so sorry. It's a grief loss in itself is a lot, and then to add the extra layer to be murdered, that's just something. And I totally understand like the the thoughts that come into one's mind about, you don't know what happened, you don't know who's watching, or if any of if it was just a, a something that shouldn't have happened, that he just got the brunt of. He sounded like a great dad. Like it takes a man to coach children. That's one credit to him. And then to even have a man who shows up for all of his children, not just like two on this side this weekend and two on the other side, but to put them together,
And
that's a
that's
great
one thing
legacy.
that he really he kept them together. Like he would keep our kids every other weekend. And so he didn't do the separate. He caught all
Mm,
fours. He got all four of his boys every other weekend. And these boys grew up together. Like, and this is
mm,
he kept them together. And so yeah, he was very hands on, and I fought for it. It's like I'm not raising these boys by myself. We need a
mm.
schedule. We need, to alternate weekends and days, and when you picking them up.
Mm.
So,
Oh, there's a new movement out there now for that. And truthfully, it's the best thing to do because, women need time to themselves.
yes.
It is unfair for anyone, either married or unmarried, to just dump the whole responsibility on one human being. And I say that even for myself. Like, I may get child support, but like, it is a lot of work
Yeah.
to be the sole custodian without any breaks on weekends, or like in any near future. And a lot of men do it. Hopefully this maybe someone has a male in their life and they can advise them
Mm.
to do better on that side, but it's unfair to the women.
Yes.
Maybe some women are strong, which shouldn't be a reason to take advantage of them. There's so many things we can do with that time if a spouse, an ex-spouse or an ex-partner chips in. There's time for self-care, there's time to go earn more money.
Mm-hmm.
There's time for you to go get a new partner. So there's a lot of things. And I don't know why all this men with kids don't. Yeah, we need to fight more for
Oh
that.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're right. We need to fight more. Like from the get-go, we need to figure out a way to empower women going through it to be like, you need to just do this. I know better now for me too. I didn't know that in the past, but yeah, definitely like equal footing, fight for everything. So thank you for sharing that. So I wonder if you can share like, so how did you cope? It was a hard time. You had two deaths. Um, how did you cope? What were your coping mechanism, so to say?
So for me, it's my faith and my religion.
Okay.
Um, it's really, like this journey has been, it's been, you just never know. I fell off. I grew up in church and I fell off for a while. And when I moved from the city to the East Bay, I would commute back and forth to the city and try to stay in church, but it became too much. And then I would think about, my kids and if people will accept them. And so I was out of church for a while. And it was after I had went through this trial where I
Mhm.
beat this case, and I was like, you know what? Ooh, I need to go back to church because I know the Lord is working on me. And so I found it was a Facebook post that I saw, and it was a friend that I had known since high school. He became a pastor and started a church. And so I would see all these spiritual posts. I would see all these, quotes. And then one slapped me in my face. It was
Mm.
WTF, where's thy faith? And I was like, woo.
Ooh, I love that.
So after I saw that post, I went to church the following Sunday and never turned back. And I would sit as close as I can because I mindset with the purpose. I need this spiritual healing,
Mm.
right? And so I fell in love with his teachings, and I just I felt like this was what I was missing. And so I just I really became, I just started to, and I'm like losing my words right now, but
Hmm.
um,
Take your time.
I just started to, you know, read scripture. I started to pray, but I also started to apply the teachings.
Mm.
You hear a sermon about putting God first, right? And what does putting God first mean? That means getting up in the morning and, reading, developing a routine, reading scripture, having conversations with the Lord, praying. And then I started to work with my first lady, and she introduced me to this book. It's called Command Your Morning by Cindy.
Oh, I follow Cindy on
Follow
Instagram.
Cindy. Oh, this book.
I need to I need to listen more to her words. I just sometimes I just go past her post, but I follow her.
It's Command Your Morning, Unleash the Power of God in Your Life.
Mm,
Ooh, this
okay.
book,
Okay.
it's a page turner. And after this book, I was just like, oh my God. And so I developed a
Mm,
routine. And so that was in 2017 when I went back to church. So that
mm.
was 2 years before my mom passed. And then now looking back, I feel like he was preparing me, right?
Yes.
He was preparing me for what was to
Hmm.
come.
Hmm.
Because if I hadn't developed the routines that I have now, I wouldn't be where I am.
Hmm.
Because when my mom passed, my first lady told me to stay close. She said, stay close. She told me, you hear about people when they lose a loved one, they fall off, right? Fall off of everything, fall off of
Yeah.
their routines, going to
Yeah.
church, everything. She told me, stay close. And
Mm,
then she gave me a leadership position. She
mm,
asked me to lead hospitality. And
oh,
in that, it just did something for me. It did something for me. I've always been in the kitchen. I've been cooking since I was like 8 or 10. And growing up in church, like I would help, in the kitchen, serving food, cleaning up, preparing the food, and always had a job in the church. And I've cooked for, programs. I've had private clients, but I always gravitated towards food. And so within the church, there was an older woman at the time who was leading, and she left. But before she left, I would always, I guess they saw it. I would always, we would
ah,
have events and I would always go help her in the kitchen. I would always, ask her, I would always gravitate towards the kitchen.
mhm.
And I was asked to lead. And I was shocked. I was like, really? Like, you want me to lead? And then what do I do with this? And she told me to pray on it. And so, I was just like, I can't say no to this.
Yeah.
This is my assignment. I felt it and I just ran with it. And so um, I became leader of hospitality in the same year my mom passed in 2019. And it was
Wow.
November of 2019.
Wow. That is that is something. The book you just shared, I want to share a similar story. So I feel like for me, a book that prepared me for my dad passing is called Soul Keeping
Mm,
by it's by John Ortberg, but
okay.
it's based on Dallas Willard,
Mm,
the pastor. Such a humble guy, such humble words, but profound insights.
mm-hmm.
Um, and I'd come across the book in 20, which year are we in? Sweet churches in, I think it was 2018, like the fall. Um, and I just read it from cover to cover. But then that book just never left me alone. First of all, the Bible program, the Bible Tuesday Night Alive we did in my old church that I found it out from, even had nothing to do with the book. But it was just like, when someone is talking, like the pastor was teaching, and I was like, oh, question, book reader here. What's the name of the book? And then it was like, oh, the book I was referring to is this book, which we did weren't you here when we did the study like two something ago? I was like, no, I didn't sign up for that one. Anyway, it turned out that book for me was profound. Just teaches you like, the space I got into with the grief of my dad. And what I'm trying to also draw out is that so in 2019, I'd left the book alone. I'd learned the teaching, but just when the pandemic started, I would start writing maybe a couple months into it. I was so deep into reading Ecclesiastes and Proverbs, like really digging into it every day. And then soul just would keep dropping at me.
Ooh.
And so I would write things down. I'll just post it on Instagram. Like my Instagram page is so off key. You'd be like, why is she posting about soul? Why? And then I'll be talking about Dark Night of the Soul, which is what the book also talks about. And funny enough, with my dad passing, I'm telling you, like I'd look at the thing that I wrote and I'm like, wow,
Mm.
this is true. Because I'm there right now. And those words helped me. It's funny, as you say, that sometimes we're being prepared for what is to come. Like my dad and I would talk like days and not days. What am I saying? Like we could talk for like an hour, even though it was in Nigeria. Like, I'd be talking to him, and even though I talked and I asked so much questions, like there were still questions I wanted to ask, but I was like, no, I'll ask him. I just never thought my dad would die. So there's that. And there is maybe like I remember even our conversations in September. But like there was one that was like saying something. I was like, no, I don't agree with what you're saying, but anyway, you're my dad. Da 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 da. So, there was that static, but like we're still chatting back and forth, but we never went back to the conversation because in my head, I'm like, you know what, that thing's going to be over. And then I'll ask him what all that was about in January. So for me, that is my only hold up with my dad. Like there was that one thing I could have, I'm bleeping myself out, asked him, but I was, I'll ask him in January when all of that is over. And that hurts a lot. My therapist has told me though that what I'm going through, what I felt, what I just described is not unique to
Normal.
me alone.
Mm.
It's like a lot of people have it, which
Mm.
is what you just said. There's always that, oh my gosh, I wish. Yeah. So,
Yeah. And you said something that I can relate to too. It's like I thought my mom would be here forever.
mhm,
Like I would have never thought that she would pass when she did. Like, wow. Like,
mhm,
and then I think about, I think, it's all the shoulda, coulda, wouldas that come in, right?
mhm,
Oh
mhm,
man, I wish I could do a Trader Joe run for her right
mhm,
now. I
mhm.
wish I could pick her up and take her wherever she needs to go. I, yeah, I
I
never.
wish I could go to Nigeria. Like I wish at the beginning of a pandemic, I'd taken my butt off and gone to Nigeria. That always comes to mind because I'm like, and even before then, I'm like, there were so many things which I think about. I'm like, okay, was that God nudging me then
Mm,
to do certain things?
mm,
And then I just passed it off, be like, nah, you're just being extra, or
mm.
you're doing too much. Yeah, so I get those, but like I'm trying to live life without holding holding did I just snort? Holding on too much to all those memories because
Yeah,
they do weigh you down. They do
yeah,
weigh you down.
yeah.
Um I know that you're also in a better place because you're in the social work field. So that's good too. So I want to ask you to share about the book for a few as we slowly get to rounding up.
Yes, so okay, let's see. I've talked about wanting to write a book for like 10 years because of
Ooh.
my childhood and my teen years. I really went through an ordeal of just stuff, right? Just, oh God, domestic violence, suicide attempt.
Mm.
And I mentioned earlier the trial. So I fought for my freedom two different occasions, two different cities, San Francisco and Oakland. I took the case to trial and won both times. And so, a lot of people say, what? When I tell people that, like, for instance, my second year in grad school, I did an internship at the public defender's office in Martinez. And so
Oh, wow.
during that interview, she asked me, so have you ever been arrested? Have you ever? And I'm like, yes. Have you ever been convicted of a crime? No. And she's like, ooh, tell me more. She wants
Mhm,
to hear
mhm.
more. And so I tell her what happened. And she's like, oh my God, like, why aren't you a lawyer? The book came about, okay, so, August 2020, we're still in the pandemic, right?
Mhm.
I graduated in May. After Anthony passed, there was a moment. He passed in April. I was set to graduate in May. And there was a time where when he first
Yeah,
happened, I was just like, how am I going
that's
to
a
write
lot.
my capstone paper? I had to write this 25-page paper to get my degree. And so, I struggled with that for a
Hmm.
moment. Like, there was a very brief second where I almost was just like, how am I going to get through this? Like, how? Like, my mama and then him. And it's just like, come on, like, how? And I mustered up the courage, right? And I was like, once I finished my capstone paper, it was like a 25-page paper, and it was one of the most challenging papers. I never, you know, I didn't, me and writing, we have a love hate thing going on. I,
Oh,
al-
okay.
I always love reading. I always love reading. And I would escape in books when I was a child. Like, I always gravitated towards reading. Um, and so, after I got my degree, it was in May, and then my big 40th was in August. I turned 40 in August. And so I had a really nice gathering with some girlfriends, and I
Okay.
was talking about, writing my book. And even when I graduated from school, I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to share my story. I'm ready to share my story. And so August came, and one of my girlfriends at the time was in the middle of writing and finishing her book, and she was talking about her partner is a coach, a life coach, and he does
Mm.
this group coaching program. And so at my birthday, she was talking about a master class that he was offering. And so I was like, okay, I'll go to the master class and see. And at the master class, I was like, okay, let me do this. Because, after school, I was doing nothing. I mean, other than looking for work, I was looking for
Mhm.
work, and I was getting lowballed. So I turned jobs down, and I wasn't in a rush to work. And so I was just like, looking around like, okay, what's next? What am I doing? And I became bored really quick. Like, I was like, I cannot sit home and do nothing. And I was like, okay, let me see what this master class and this group coaching program is about. And that's how the book came about. And so
Mm.
I joined the group coaching program. And in that, so the program is called
I was
TNE,
gonna ask, yeah.
TNE, Team No Excuses.
Okay, so it's
N
TN,
E.
excuse it, is it .com or something?
No, no. So that's the name of the program. Eddie Moore is the
Oh,
coach, and
okay, Eddie Moore.
so
Okay, okay.
it's TNE, Team No Excuses, right? And so, he lays this foundation where you write goals. You actually he starts with telling you to envision where you see yourself in 90 days. Not 90 days. The 12-week program, 3 months, 3 months,
Okay,
right? Where do you
okay.
see yourself
Mhm,
in three
mhm,
months? And then you write goals for the 3 months, and then
mhm,
you accomplish them by writing weekly goals. And so
mhm.
I went and I said, okay, I had two things that I wanted to do. First, I was going to do my book. And then I was like, okay, let me work on something else. So Chase's Hands is named after my mom, and Chesa was her nickname. And it's my food baby. And so I was like, back and forth. Do I want to focus on one or the other? Do I do both? And so I just decided to start chipping away at both. And
Okay.
so um, the food actually became quite challenging, and then I got discouraged a little bit because there were so many parts that you have to have in order to sell food. You got to
Mhm,
have a health permit, seller's permit, like
mhm,
all this stuff, right? But the book, I started to write goals where I would write for 30 minutes a day. 30 to 60 minutes was the goal to write a day. And so I just started, by then, the program started in September, early September. And then I found a job and started my job mid September. And so I was working and doing still doing the group coaching program. So I would start writing on my
Mm.
lunch break. And I started, on my lunch break, I'm writing. And then after work, I was starting to write. And, coach would say things like, you spend 8 hours a day helping someone else and building their business.
Mhm.
Why are you not spending 2 or 3 hours to
Yep.
build your business?
Yep.
And, I never thought about entrepreneurship, but there are so many people around me that are entrepreneurs. And so, my thing was, I get my degree and I'll have a job and I'll be good. But I started to see other things when I
Oh
got
yeah.
that group.
Social work field is a great field to have a private practice. You're in the
I
right place.
started to see, and I'm so, you said that, and I like, so that's one of my goals too, is to build my private practice. And so, I started chipping away, and I just 12 weeks later, my manuscript was done.
Wow, that's amazing.
And
Wow.
coach was blown away. Like, coach rants and raves. Like, he's like, I haven't even done what you did. Like, you gonna have to coach
Wow.
me. He said to me one time, you gonna have to coach me. Like, how did you do
Oh.
this? How are you smashing out a chapter a week? So that's what
Mm.
I started to do. I started to write a chapter a week. And it wasn't, I didn't write goals to write a chapter a week. I wrote goals to write 30 to 60 minutes a day. And that's what got me to where 12 weeks later, I
Mm.
had a manuscript.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Don't worry. Who knows? I keep trying. My focus is to continue in the finance field, but as you know, I dabble in. I've always worked in human services, even though in the finance and accounting side,
Hmm.
but at the same time, all my other activities outside of work is more human services ish.
Hmm.
Um, I have, I guess my thinking is it's harder to transition out of finance. Even in my agency, I found like even for family services worker position, nowadays you still need to have a social work a degree. So me saying, "Oh, I work in the same building as you all," it's not getting me in. And I think that was the hardest part for me to realize. I think one time I was like, "Oh, I'll go get a Psych D," and I remember talking to a friend, a lady in church who worked in the same department. She was a doctor. She had taken 8 years or something to get the Psych D in those days. And
Hmm.
she's like, you don't even need to do all that anymore. Like, just go get the masters in social work. Sometimes I wonder the amount of time I've been asking about masters in social work. I would have been finished by now. So
Hmm.
I need to figure out this year. Um, it's part of my goal. It's listed in my goal. It's either to
Hmm.
do like my CF Series 6 exams and all of those type of insurance and then finance brokerage type of exams, or just to one time go for social work and not and just call it a day. I feel like yeah, that's I need to figure that out this year because on my board at work, I've had CPA. I'll get my CPA by 2023 because that being divorced just threw that out the window. Again, like what you were saying about shared custody and all of that, I didn't have that, so there was no way to pursue any dream of finishing a CPA exam. You can't be taking a CPA exam while also nursing like a 5 month old baby, and you have a 5 year old and another, how old was he? 7 year old and a 4 year old. It was just everywhere. But I totally love your story about the social work. So that's how I'm sharing that. We'll see. Again, the title of the podcast is called Loving the Work You Do. At
Yeah.
some point, everyone will find out the work I finally attach myself to. But this is part of the journey
Hmm.
to figure that out too. So thank you so much for being here with me today for sharing all that. So can you share your social media handles with the people listening, where they can find you, where they can find your book when it comes out, and when your book is coming out?
Thank you so much, Gloria, for having me and the opportunity to share my story and your platform to share where they can find my information. So, Facebook, I go by Tisha Harvey. It's just my name on Facebook, Tisha Harvey. On IG, I have a page for my book. So my book is titled Survivor Turned Provider.
Ah,
And it's Survivor
ooh.
Turned Provider book on IG. I
Okay.
have a website where I'm doing pre-sales right now, and I'll probably do the pre-sale for probably about another week. We're actually tomorrow will be my second week, and I've already
Okay.
surpassed my goals. And
Yeah.
so I've been back and forth, like, do I keep it going or do I stop it? Because I'm offering a special gift for people who pre-order the
Okay.
book. And so my website is www.stpbook.com.
Okay. stpbook.com. Okay, I'll put all those in the blog
Yes.
write up so people can, look there for the information.
Uh,
What's the gift? What's the gift? Candles?
Um,
Cookies?
I'm not sharing what the gift is. It's a surprise, and it's actually a custom made. Well, I guess I can share it. I don't mind.
Yes, let people see it here.
I don't mind sharing.
We get dibs. Yes, please.
Okay. So, one of my many skills, I love arts and crafts. And I love, like, I used to work for Oakland Parks and Rec and at an after school program. And we did a lot of science and art. And I miss it. And so I said, ooh, what can I do with my art skills to offer a special gift for people who pre-order the
Yes.
book? So this is what I'm doing.
Oh, that's pretty.
Now these I
Oh.
am custom. I'm gonna kind of like cater them to each person who pre-ordered
Okay.
the book, and so I
Is
my
it a
lo-
prayer bead? Is it
so this is um a beaded bookmark.
oh, oh, neat.
So you take it and you can hold your place
Oh my
in the
gosh.
so different, right? It's so
Yeah.
and so and it's this is something that I was like, how can I make something that's different, something that's original,
Mhm.
and something that is personal to the person who bought the book, right? And so my goal was to, I was going to ask people what their favorite color was and kind of like cater it around that.
Okay, okay.
And so
It's really pretty. I can see that once we get out of
yeah, it's
the whole COVID hibernation, you're at the beach or at the pool reading your book or not, and
And so this is the special gift, and
oh, thank you for
I'm
sharing
back and
that.
forth about if I'm gonna do this and something else, but this is the start of the special gift for people who pre-order books,
Okay.
and
You
it's
all listening to the podcast, you can't see this, but it's really pretty. It's like a string of pearls at the end with a medallion of sort, and then it's really long. You can put it in the book, and then it drops down like you have on a necklace that's like a two-tier thingy. It's real pretty. I don't think I'm describing it as beautifully as it looks. I like that. Wonder if
thank
it could do like be a window chime too and go bing bing.
so
So
I'm
thank you
pulling
for
out my
sharing that.
artsy crafty skills, and I'm gonna make a couple of well, I have so many orders. I'm like
Oh,
I mean, they are showing up and showing out. They are blowing my mind. Like my exceeded my expectations. I
okay.
did not expect to sell these many books during the pre-sale. And I was just like, oh, like one of my professors ordered 10 books.
Oh wow, that's beautiful. Oh
And
my
she is
gosh.
like, I need 10 books. I need them all signed.
Because
So
that's a skill that not everyone truly has, to write. And so yeah, you're doing a great thing, and that information that you have in there, I know it's like being a survivor. The grief part is there, a little bit of the advocacy part.
yes,
Um, yeah, that's really going to be
yes.
helpful. I
So
like
yes, I'm definitely talking about my grief. I'm talking about my mental health challenges. I'm talking about advocacy, and I'm also sharing resources, which is a special part of the book too.
that. Okay.
In the back, I'll have a number of resources for people related to food, related to education, legal resources, and mental health resources as well.
Okay. Awesome. Amazing. Once again, thank you so much for being here. And thanks to everyone else for listening. See you
Yes.
soon.
Thank you so much.
You
Thank you,
all too.
Gloria.
Bye.
Bye.